Stage with me. It's great. It really feels good. So, what are some of your favorite musicals? Anybody?
West Side Story.
West Side Story. Why?
I love the music.
Love the music. And the dance. What?
South Pacific.
And the story. Yes, right, exactly.
I love you because.
So say again?
I love you because.
I love you because.
When I think of home.
What?
When I think of home.
When I think of The Wiz. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes. The way we were. Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. What a beautiful morning.
Carousel.
Fantastics. Carousel.
Hairspray.
What? 54th? Oh, 42nd Street?
Yeah, 42nd.
42nd Street. I must have been like channeling what she really meant. So wait, what did you say over here?
Company.
King and I.
South Company.
Company. What?
South Pacific.
South Pacific. Watch that man right out of my hair. Camelot. It's May. It's May. Dusty with
Showboat. My brother went to school with Bill Warfield.
Oh, wonderful. Washington High School. That's right. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, but back there.
Sound of Music.
Sound of Music. Well, wouldn't you know? That's one of my favorites too. And it just so happens we're gonna do a song from Sound of Music. When I say we, I mean we are gonna do a song. Have you ever gone to the sing-alongs to those movies? Oh my God, you got to do it. I went to Sound of Music. Yeah, I went to Sound of Music at the Castro Theater in San Francisco, packed primarily with gay men who knew all the lyrics and the word and the dialogue, and it was a scream. I mean, it was so funny. It was great. It was just great. So if you get a chance, because I know some of them have come here, and if you get a chance, go. You know, they have the words, you know, down at the bottom, and everyone sings along on the song. It's great. I mean, talk about building community. That's, you know, I think if we got the Israelis and the Palestinians in the theater, and we did the Sound of Music, I bet you they'd figure something out. I mean, it's so we're gonna do Do, Re, Mi. Now, most of us know Do, Re, Mi. Do, dear, female, yeah. But we're gonna add our little sign language to each of those notes. So, I better do this. So, Do is Do, a deer, female deer. Yeah. Ray, a drop of golden sun. What is it? A name like Ray, a drop of golden sun. Sorry. Me, a name I call myself. Self is important. Me, a long, long way to run. Look how far it goes. So. Sorry. So. And me with a breath. So, la. A note that just follows after so. T. Job and end. And we go back to don't. So let's try. We're going to sing this 3 times so we'll get a little practice the first time. The second time is the sort of dress rehearsal. And then we are on Star Search or... so you think you know nothing. Oh, American Idol. That's what we're on. Who's got, yeah, America's Got Talent. Right here. All right, let's try it. I wasn't ready. I told you that was a rehearsal. go on the road. Fantastic. But can you feel that? You know, music, dance, theater, art, you know, whatever we do that's creative really reveals something in us. It not only reveals something within each of us, but it connects us to what's revealed in each other. That's really the power of creativity. It connects us to the thing or things in us that aren't readily, obviously apparent. The part of us that is in our depth, the true who we are. You know, some of us call that God, some of us call it the Great Spirit, some of us call it a whisper. Whatever you call it doesn't really matter. It's the experience of it that really matters. And we just had it just now. Isn't that exciting? I'm excited. I had a story to tell you, except since I'm not following my script anymore, I have no idea what it was. I want to tell you a little story about the time when I was mugged. I know there's a downer after Sound of Music. It's not really a downer though. Remember before how I told you about the perspective thing, you know, and really the experience is about how you perceive it. So I was in New York, and across the street, I was coming out of Lincoln Center. It was after an opera or something, so it was probably 11 o'clock at night. And I lived at the time on West 81st in Columbus, so it's not that far. No, actually, no, at that time I lived on 147th Street up in Harlem, and 147th and St. Nicholas. So anyway, I'm coming out of Lincoln Center, and I start walking up the street to go to the subway, and this group of guys, young guys, probably, I don't think the oldest one was more than 18 or 19. They come walking towards me, and for some reason, you know how you have that little voice in your head, and sometimes you listen, sometimes you say, what? I said, what? But the next thing I knew, one of them had a gun and had it pointed at my back and said, come with us. And they marched me all the way into the middle of Central Park. Now, granted, it was only 11 o'clock at night. There were a lot of people on the street in New York in front of Lincoln Center. In fact, there was a policeman standing on the corner talking to each other. But whatever. We got into the park, and you know, the thing is, I kept talking the entire time. That's sort of like now. It must have been a rehearsal for this. And because I was nervous, so it was kind of helping me to just start talking. Oh, I'm from Rochester, New York. I don't know what I said. And then they sat me down on a bench, and the guy said, "Be quiet." I guess I have to stop talking. And then he put the gun here. Now, ordinarily, I probably would have been screaming. But for some reason, I started looking at these guys, and I thought, why are they doing this? And so that kept my attention, actually, away from the fear of it. They took my ring, you know, rings. I have rings all the time. I had rings then, too. They took all the rings, my watch. I had like $10. They took that in the wallet. And they told me to get up and start walking into the park. Then I thought, well, wait a minute. They have a gun to my back and I'm turned around. I mean, I don't know if I can do that. The guy says, you can do it. I said, do it. And I did it, but I ran. But then they ran off. So I walked out of the park, and those policemen were still standing in there in front of Lincoln Center. I walked up to them, and I said, I was just mugged in the park, and I think at that time, the subway was like 65 cents or 75 cents or something like that, and I didn't have a penny, and I had to go all the way to 147th Street, and I said, well, they said, well, you want to fill out a report? And I said, well, I don't know. I can't remember what they looked like. I was somewhat in shock, I think, so I really didn't remember what they looked like. And how many there were, I don't know. And I said, well, could I just borrow 75 cents to get on the subway? They all kind of looked at each other and went, well, I don't have 75 cents. I don't have 75 cents. So I walked home. But you know what? That walk allowed me to process. It allowed me to not think about poor me and I just got mugged, which I did for a little while, but it got me to think about the bigger picture there. Not what happened to me, but what was happening. Why was this happening? It allowed me to transform that experience for myself. And in many ways, that experience, some years later, really informed me about creating my organization, Peace Art, to create sort of world peace through art. So maybe if I hadn't had that experience, I might not have had that insight. Now, I don't want to have that experience again, and I never have, but what I'm saying is that the experiences we have, though can be traumatic, but they also can open. They can open something in us, an awareness, usually, of something greater. This next song from American Idiot? Yeah. From American Idiot, kind of goes there. Talks about loss, hurt, but yet there's hope. And again, that hope is you. You've already got it.
Summer has come and gone, the innocent and never last. Wake me up when September ends. Like my father's come to pass, 7 years has gone so fast. Wake me up when September ends. Here comes the rain again, falling from the stars, drenched in my pain again, coming we are. As my memory rests, but never forgets what I lost. Wake me up when September ends. Summer has come and passed, the innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends. Ring out the bells again, like we did when spring September ends. Like my father's come to pass, 20 years has gone so fast. Wake me up when September ends. Wake me up when September ends. Wake me up when September ends.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
This month, September, my dad would have been 91, I think, 90 or 91. My dad was a great guy. He, some of you knew him. A magnificent singer, incredible musician. He was the head of the 98th Division Army Band for 38, almost 40 years. Started the Xerox Chorus. He was really a gentle soul. And that song reminds me of him. I guess that's why I'm all of a sudden talking about him. And it's his birthday in a few days. You know, he didn't give me a lot of advice when I was a kid. But his life gave me so much advice. Something I say a lot, actually, is my parents, both my mom and dad, they never said to me, you can grow up and be anything you want. They always said, you can grow up and be everything you want. And of course, I've sort of taken that to heart. But it's a different mindset if you think about it. It's an opening. Knowing that you can be everything, there are no limits. You know, I never thought of limiting myself. It just wasn't even in my vocabulary. When I left school all those times and went back and came back, it just was how it was. I never thought about it really as something right or wrong. I just thought this is how life is for me. And I'm so grateful, Mom, that you planted that seed in me, because it really informed my entire life. You know, I told you about the time I was at the Metropolitan Opera. You know, that was one of the most exhilarating moments, walking out on the Metropolitan Opera stage at 18 or 19 years old, whatever. I lived in Macau for a while as I was dancing with a Chinese dance company. I was the only member of that company that wasn't Chinese. I lived in Japan for 2 years, in a circus, no less. Sort of like a Cirque du Soleil kind of circus. I really had a very blessed life. I spent the night in Windsor Castle, and that's a story I have to tell you offline. I had lunch with, this is a wonderful, wonderful story. So, I was living in New York. I think I've told this story about the little girl in China, but I'll just say it briefly. So I had this experience in China where I was with this dance company, as I just said, and we were touring around Asia, and we were in China. And we were just near Mongolia, a very remote area of China. And after our tours, I always like to stay on myself and just wander around and just look, at stuff. And so I did that. At that time, I didn't really speak any Chinese. Mandarin, they speak, and I didn't really read it yet. So I kind of was lost, because that area did not have any English signs or people speaking English. So I got on this train, which I didn't know where it was going because I couldn't read the sign. And after a couple of hours, I just got off. I always figure, you are somewhere. You may not know where that where is, but you are somewhere. I once got lost in Japan for like, from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. and I was just wandering around trying to find my hotel. It was terrible. Anyway, that's a different story. But I got off this train near Mongolia, and there was sort of a deserted area. There was like nobody around. And I saw this little girl, she was about 7 or 8 years old, and she was sitting on the ground. And she had a stick in her hand, she was kind of doodling, you know, on the ground, in the dirt. And when she saw me, she stood up and she was like shaking like a leaf. I mean, she was scared. I mean, she had probably never seen anybody with dark skin. I mean, I could have been a Martian or, you know. There was no electricity in this town, so they didn't have television or, I mean, you know, so it could have easily been some outer space person showing up. So I eventually sat down on the ground and I inched my way over toward her. And I picked up her stick and I started to draw a doodle. And I felt her looking over my shoulder. She had stopped shaking and she was looking at over my shoulder. And eventually she sat down and she started doodling with me. And we never said a word to each other. And then I heard the train coming back the other way and I thought, I'm not gonna get on the train. And I waved goodbye and she waved goodbye. And that was it. That wasn't it. A few years later, every summer I work with a dance company in Martha's Vineyard, and I'm laying on the beach, which is why I worked in Martha's Vineyard. St. Vincent Beach, huh? Anyway, and I'm thinking about this little girl, and it suddenly hits me. Now we hear all the time, we're one people, we're all connected, but what does that mean, really? I knew what it meant. I experienced exactly what it meant. There were all these seemingly barriers, you know, adult, child, African American, Chinese, the language, male, female, all of those things that we think prevent us from connecting to each other had nothing to do with it. I connected so deeply to this little girl, more profoundly in some ways than I have ever done to the people I see every day. That to me was a huge lesson. And I thought, I got to do something that would give other people this experience. So I write poetry. So I thought, oh, you know, poetry. People could write poems to each other and sort of touch each other in a way they wouldn't even have to meet, but that could really touch someone very profoundly, very deeply, very real. So I started writing to people that I'd met in my travels, and by that time I traveled pretty much around the world twice. And I was back in New York, in my Brooklyn apartment. And I started writing to everyone I could think of who I'd met in my travels and asked them to write 2 lines of poetry. What is peace to me? And they started writing back. And then they told their friends and their friends' friends, and pretty soon my little apartment was just stacks of these letters with poems. Some of them were really extraordinary. Poems from farmers in India, children in China, soldiers in Nicaragua. One of the soldiers wrote to me and said, poetry is a pastime in Nicaragua. Everyone writes poetry. And he had all the guys in his platoon or his group write a poem. There was a man and his wife in Indonesia who started a peace club. And once a month, they had people met at their house, and they did one little thing for world peace that they could do, something in their community. And they started a newsletter, and for years, they sent me the newsletter. And famous people wrote too. Mother Teresa wrote. She first wrote me a letter that said, I don't know how to write poetry, But this is what I think peace is. Of course, it was the most beautiful poetry. And I wrote her back and said that was poetry. President Jimmy Carter wrote. President Mitterrand from France wrote. Oscar Arias Sanchez of Costa Rica, President of Costa Rica wrote. Gwendolyn Brooks, the poet, wrote. Paul Taylor, the choreographer, wrote. Agnes DeMille wrote. And one day I get a letter, this blue, beautiful sky blue letter, envelope, Leonard Bernstein. Now, Leonard Bernstein was one of my childhood heroes. So of course I went through the roof when I get that. So I opened it up, and it's a full-page poem. Now that you're supposed to write 2 lines, it's a gorgeous poem. And he said to me in the letter, I really am interested in this idea. What could I meet and find out more about what you're doing? So we had lunch together right outside Lincoln Center, one of those cafes. It was a changing point for me. The reason I went through this whole story was because one of the things he said to me was, the artist moves society forward. He said, you know, you can't just do this with poetry. You have to take all the arts and use them in a way that pulls us all to a better place. And you know, it came to my mind that song of his from Candide, Make Our Garden Grow. That is exactly what I did. I started my peace art organization right after that, when I was in grad school. And that has been sort of my motivation. And no matter really what I'm doing, I'm always doing that. And in a sense, it's taking my life from one place and putting it somewhere else. It's bringing light to a place that might have not had it. When I've taken those peace art concerts to all these different places around the world, and you know, there's a lot of obstacles that are there. You know, I remember going to Taipei, and we couldn't raise the money to do this community peace concert. And we went to this magazine and said, you know, this is really about this culture here. And what I was trying to do